There's a moment you've felt before, when someone says your name with that tone, when they question your intent, your value, your character, and for a split second, everything inside you screams to explain, to fix it, to show them they've misunderstood. But here's the truth: no one told you. The second you defend yourself, you've already lost. Because now, you've made their words matter more than your silence. You've handed them the frame. And you've told the room, without realizing, "Oh, please understand me," that need, that urge to be seen the right way. That's not power, that's dependence dressed as dignity. You want to stay in control, then stop reacting like someone who isn't. Because real strength doesn't defend, it doesn't explain, it doesn't even blink. It makes people rethink their attack just by standing still. And if you've ever walked away from a conversation, heart racing, wishing you had said less, then you already know. Power doesn't come from being understood, it comes from being unreadable. Most people believe explaining themselves makes them look honest, reasonable, decent. But what they never realize is that explaining is bleeding. You're not clarifying the truth, you're spilling control. Because when you explain, you don't just answer a question, you accept the authority of the one asking. You step into their frame, and in that moment, it becomes theirs. They decide how you're seen, not you. And it doesn't matter how perfect your explanation sounds. No one's listening to the words. They're watching the fact that you needed to speak at all. Because power is rarely about facts. It's about emotional gravity. Let me show you something. There was a man named Caleb, a mid-level executive, smart, sharp, polished. In a strategy meeting, someone questioned his proposal not with evidence, but with tone. You always go for the flashy stuff, but does it ever really work? The room went still. Caleb leaned forward. He clarified, he justified, he even showed past examples. It sounded brilliant, but it didn't matter. The room wasn't watching his proof. They were watching how fast he reached for it. And in that moment, his power bled out, because the second you start explaining, you signal this: "You've hit something I care about, and I need you to see me a certain way." That urgency is weakness, and people feel it, even if they don't say it. It's why the truly powerful don't try to prove. They posture, they pause, they redirect, because the frame is the battlefield. And if you're not controlling it, you're already losing it. So what do instead? You wait, you lean back. You hold your words like a sword you don't need to draw, and then you move the spotlight. Let's hear your strategy. Then, you've just flipped the entire room, from being on trial to holding the gavel. Because here's what the insecure never see. You don't gain power by defending your truth. You gain power by making others defend theirs. Let that sink in. And if you've ever been in that room, explaining yourself while your hands tremble under the table, you know how heavy the air gets. But what if next time you didn't flinch? What if you let the silence hold all the tension and made them squirm inside it? What if, instead of proving, you made them prove you wrong? The moment you stop explaining is the moment you start controlling. And once you've tasted that, you'll never go back. People are drawn to what they don't understand, not because they're curious, but because the unknown holds power. That's the true leverage of silence. It builds something no amount of explanation ever could. Mystery, aura, the sense that there's more to you than what's being said or shown. And in a world where everyone is trying so hard to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, the one who says nothing becomes the one they can't stop watching. There's a kind of presence that enters the room before you speak, and lingers long after you leave. Not loud, not flashy, just still, unshakable. Let me take you into a moment. Julian Black, not a legend then, just a guest at a tech summit in San Francisco. On stage, during a panel Q&A, a peer took a jab at him. Called his leadership cold, calculating, disconnected from the human side of business. Everyone expected a rebuttal. Julian didn't even shift in his seat. No retort, no smirk, not even eye contact. He simply folded his hands, held the silence like it belonged to him, and in that silence, something shifted. People didn't focus on the insult. They focused on why it didn't land. They whispered, they second-guessed. Maybe he's above it. Maybe it's not even worth his breath. That moment created what years of public speaking never could, aura, because aura doesn't come from speaking well. It comes from holding back what you could say and making the room imagine it instead. That's the magic. When you speak, people listen, but when you don't, people wonder. They start creating stories about you. They start assigning meaning, projecting depth, assuming strength, and the best part, most of what they imagine overestimates you. Because silence doesn't just resist the attack, it reverses it. It turns the accuser into someone trying too hard, trying to expose you, trying to provoke a response, trying to matter, and the more they try, the smaller they seem. Because now, the room isn't watching you, they are watching them spiral. That's aura in action. You don't need to wear power on your sleeve. Let it hang in the air. Let people feel the weight of what you could say and chose not to. And if you've ever felt the room turn when you paused, even for a second, you know this truth. Silence, held with presence, is louder than defense and infinitely more dangerous. They'll come for you in all kinds of ways, some direct, some dressed in charm, others wrapped in jokes that cut just deep enough to sting. You're arrogant. You're manipulative. You're not as real as you pretend to be. And every instinct in your body will tell you, respond, prove them wrong. Clear your name, but that's where power dissolves. Because the moment you try to fix the frame, you've already stepped inside theirs. So what do you do instead? You flip it, not with anger, not with argument, with calm inversion. Let their insult reveal their insecurity, not yours. Someone calls you arrogant. Smile, look past them. Say, strange how confidence makes people uncomfortable. They say you're manipulative. Tilt your head slightly. Only people who fear influence say that. They say you're fake. Pause, shrug lightly. Everyone says that when they stop getting what they want. You didn't defend, you redirected. You didn't enter their frame, you made them collapse inside it. Because what they expected was resistance, a wall, a battle. What they got was a mirror, and mirrors are cruel to the wrong kind of ego. This isn't about clever comebacks, it's about surgical control. Because when you make their words about them, you take the spotlight off yourself. Now they're exposed. They feel seen, not in the way they wanted, but in the way they feared. And the crowd, they always notice. They see who's calm, who's reactive, who's hunting validation, and who doesn't need it. The strongest replies don't raise your voice. They raise doubt in the person who just tried to cut you. That's verbal judo. You never meet force with force. You let their energy carry them too far. And when they realize they've overstepped, they try to pull back, but it's too late. They're already off balance. On record, on display, and you're still grounded, still calm, still above it. This is what it means to turn their blade inward. You don't need to stab, they'll fall on it themselves. And if you've ever been accused, misunderstood, or called out by someone who just wanted to feel bigger, you know how satisfying it is to answer with nothing but clarity, no heat, no rush. Just stillness and a mirror. Silence is easy to overlook until it's weaponized. Most people expect tension to rise through words, but in reality, it rises through absence. Because when you don't respond, when you don't flinch, something starts to happen, not inside you, but inside them. They start to spin, first in their mind, then in their behavior. They reread what they said, replay how it landed. They wonder if they went too far, if they missed something, and the longer you stay quiet, the louder their mind gets. This is the psychology of pressure. When you don't release it with reaction, it turns inward into them. Let me tell you a story. 3 months ago, Julian Black was called out online by a former business partner. A thread, a video, a dozen subtle accusations meant to provoke. Julian said nothing, no comment, no tweet, not even a notification. At first, the crowd was confused. Then, the accuser started posting again, this time louder, more emotional, less controlled. Day 2, another post. Day 3, another escalation. But Julian, silent. By the end of the week, the crowd wasn't asking what Julian had done. They were asking why this guy was so obsessed. Because silence, when held without apology, creates imbalance. It doesn't confirm guilt, it forces reflection. People begin to doubt the accuser, not because of what was said, but because of how calm you remained. And that doubt, it spreads, it infects the narrative. It makes people reassess everything. Maybe he's not responding because he doesn't need to. Or maybe he's above this. Maybe this isn't about him at all. And now the attacker isn't the whistleblower. They're the spectacle, and the moment they try to push harder, the moment they scream louder, is the moment they fall. Because nothing looks more unstable than someone trying to prove you're unstable, while you say nothing. That's the paradox of power. You gain more by doing less if you do it with intention. But here's the catch: silence only works when it's owned. Not avoidance, not fear, but pure, deliberate stillness, like a mountain during a storm, unshaken. And the more they rage, the more they reveal, while you reveal nothing. That's what makes them break, not because you attacked, but because they couldn't handle the space you refused to fill. And if you've ever been there, watching someone unravel because you gave them nothing to fight, you already understand the truth. Power isn't noise. It's control over the urge to make any. There's a phrase that ends more battles than 100 perfect defenses. If that's how you see it, 7 words, 0 resistance, maximum control, because that phrase doesn't fight the accusation. It lets it pass, not in surrender, but in supremacy. It signals that you're not here to be corrected. You're not here to convince, you're here, watching, and that unsettles people more than any rebuttal ever could. Because when someone comes at you, they're expecting heat, emotion, a crack in your surface. They want the argument, they want the chaos, they want to pull you into their storm. But when you stay calm, when your words land like still water, you flip the gravity. Now they feel like the emotional one, now they look reactive, now the spotlight isn't on what they said, it's on why they needed to say it so loudly. And here's the part most never see: when you say, if that's how you see it, you're not validating their judgment. You're removing yourself from their frame entirely. You're showing that their opinion is just that, an opinion, not a fact. Not a command, not something you need to bow to. It's like putting their words on a shelf, not throwing them back, not holding onto them, just placing them somewhere they can no longer touch you. That's emotional discipline. Because true confidence doesn't need to erase someone's misunderstanding. It just refuses to carry it. You don't explain. You don't plead. You don't prove. You acknowledge with detachment. And that detachment, that's what drives people crazy. Because now they can't tell if they were wrong, or if you're just too composed to care. They want more. They want another round. But the round never comes. All they're left with is the echo of their own need to be right. And in that echo, they start to shrink, because you didn't give them what they came for. You gave them space to question themselves. That's the move: short, grounded, disarming. Not because it weakens you, but because it makes them wonder if they ever had power in the first place. So next time someone tries to rattle you, don't match their tone, don't correct their vision, just hold the line, if that's how you see it, and let their need for control dissolve in the silence that follows. There's a difference between having a reputation and having an aura. One is built on words, reviews, public image. The other, it's built on silence, tension, presence. A good reputation says, he's a decent guy. A powerful aura says, don't mess with him. And most people spend their lives chasing the first: clarity, praise, clean approval. But the ones who lead, who dominate, who are remembered, they build the second. They don't need to be loved. They don't even need to be liked. They just need the room to pause when they walk in. Think about this. When Julian Black stepped into a conference last spring, nobody clapped, nobody ran to greet him. But conversations quieted. People straightened their backs, eyes shifted, not because he was famous, not because he was friendly. Because he carried something most can't explain, the feeling that if you cross this man, The cost will be subtle, silent, and devastating. That's aura, and aura doesn't need defense. It doesn't chase approval. It just is. It exists in how you stand, in what you don't say, in the way you look past nonsense like it never touched your radar. A man with reputation might fight to protect it. A man with aura, he doesn't even check if it's under attack, because aura is built on emotional immunity. You're not reacting, you're not playing, you're not trying to be seen the right way, you're just still, confident, certain, and in that certainty, people project everything: fear, respect, curiosity. They fill the silence with assumptions, and those assumptions almost always make you look more powerful than you actually are. That's the trick. You stop trying to be understood, and you start becoming unreadable. Because when people can't decode you, they don't attack, they hesitate, they calculate, they wonder what kind of storm they're stepping into just by questioning your silence. So don't fight for reputation. Let others chase that. Build aura. Make your presence mean more than your explanation ever could, and let every room you enter feel the weight of what you never had to say. There's a silence colder than calm. It's not the pause before you speak. It's the void after you choose not to. Not because you're unsure, but because you've already decided. They're not worth your energy. This isn't passive. It's deliberate disappearance. No message, no reply, no acknowledgement, not even a block, just gone. And what happens next? They spiral. At first, they think you're waiting, then they think you're offended, then they panic, because most people survive off emotional feedback. Validation, even in conflict, they need to know you saw them. They want to see the flame in your eyes, the twitch in your response. But when you vanish completely, calmly, they're left with silence. And silence, in the hands of someone composed, becomes a mirror. They start talking to themselves, replaying what they said, reading into your absence. And the longer you stay gone, the louder their need becomes. They post again, they message again. They reach out through mutual friends. They want a response, even a negative one, just to feel relevant. But all they get is space. Heavy, blank, echoing space. And in that space, they shrink, because absence feels like rejection, but controlled absence. That feels like judgment. It tells them you didn't just walk away. You didn't even stop to explain. You disappeared like they never mattered. That burns deeper than any insult ever could. Let me give you a moment. Julian once ended a business relationship, not with a fight, not with an argument. He simply stopped engaging. No warning, no closure. The partner sent emails, left voicemails, tried public jabs. Julian silent. Within weeks, the man's tone changed from aggressive to desperate to apologetic. But it was too late, because once you disappear, you're no longer playing defense. You're removing the board. You're telling them this game, this battle isn't happening, because you don't argue with irrelevance. You don't debate what's beneath you. You vanish and let them collapse under the weight of being ignored. This is more than strategy. It's discipline. It's the refusal to be baited, to be dragged, to be defined by someone else's emotion. And it works because it's rare. Everyone wants closure. Everyone wants the last word. But you left the conversation before it even became one. That's not silence, that's erasure. And when you learn how to do it with calm, you'll never waste another breath on the unworthy. Some battles aren't won by fighting. They're won by standing still, while others trip over their own aggression. That's the essence of power judo, using someone's emotional momentum to make them fall, not with resistance, with redirection. When someone attacks you, their energy is high, charged, desperate to land. But what happens when you don't meet them head on? What happens when you stay grounded? They keep swinging, and with every extra move, they expose more of themselves. More insecurity, more instability, more weakness. They start looking unhinged, not because of what you did, but because you didn't do anything at all. This is where verbal warfare becomes psychological chess. You don't counter their claim. You invert it. You're arrogant. Strange how confidence threatens the insecure. You're manipulative. Only people who fear influence say that. You're fake. That's what people say when they lose access. No defense, no debate. Just reflection pointed at them. You made their jab. A mirror. Now they are explaining themselves. Now they're on trial, and the crowd, they watch the shift, they feel the pressure turn, because you just flipped the emotional frame. You're no longer the accused, you're the observer, unmoved, untouched, and they're unraveling. This is what Julian called the turn of the blade. Don't catch the sword with your hands, let it keep swinging. Let it find its way back to the one who threw it, because those who attack from emotion usually don't notice, they're cutting their own credibility. And if you've ever watched someone escalate, post after post, trying to force a reaction from you, you know how powerful stillness can be. They don't just lose the crowd, they lose their own footing, and the silence you hold. It starts to look like a throne, not because you silenced them, but because they made so much noise, they silenced themselves. That's the flip. You didn't overpower them, you let them prove they were never in control. And the world saw it, without you saying a word. The final evolution isn't silence. It's something deeper. It's the aura that follows silence, the gravity it creates, the stillness that doesn't just protect you, it defines you. At first, you learn not to defend, you resist the urge to explain, then you master the pause. The inversion, the withdrawal, but beyond that, you stop reacting entirely, you move with intention, every word, a choice, every look, calculated. Every absence, a message. That's where real power begins, because now, you're not just silent, you're unreadable. You no longer respond to accusations, you no longer try to correct misconceptions, you let them live. And something strange starts to happen. People begin to protect your name, without you asking. They say, he doesn't even engage with this stuff. Why are you attacking someone who didn't reply? Is this really about him, or about you? The crowd shifts, slowly, silently, because no one feels the need to defend someone who's already shouting. But someone who says nothing, that sparks something ancient, a protective instinct. They fill your silence with strength. They assign wisdom to your restraint. They see dignity where others see vulnerability, because the one who doesn't explain becomes legend. People assume you know more, feel more, could say more, but choose not to, and that assumption, it gives you control without effort. That's the paradox of presence. You don't fight for clarity. You stand in definition. You define your tone, your timing, your image, your stillness, and you become untouchable, not because of what you show, but because of everything you've trained yourself not to. So when they come for you next time, in public, in private, online, to your face, don't panic, don't rush, don't react. Let your silence speak. Let the storm rage against something that won't move. And understand this, your strength isn't in how well you explain yourself, it's in how deeply you've decided you don't need to.